One of Hofstede's dimensions are masculinity versus femininity, which refers to the degree to which a culture will foster and maintain differences between males and females. Cultures high in masculinity have clear, distinct emotional gender roles, where men are supposed to be assertive and tough, while women are supposed to be modest, tender, and value quality of life. Cultures that are low in masculinity does not have these clear distinctions between men and women. Both genders are supposed to be concerned with all values. Before you make the decision that this subject isn't at all interesting for you, we want you to know that this video will end up in a comparison between two countries being very high versus very low in masculinity, namely Switzerland and Sweden. These countries are both very modern, individualistic, wealthy, and well-developed, and doesn't have any other notable differences in any of the other Hofstede dimensions. The behavior of men and women produce different psychological outcomes that directly affect behavior. Cultures vary in how they act on these gender differences, with some cultures fostering great differences between the genders and other cultures minimizing those differences. But are gender differences and the reinforcement of these differences culture-specific, or are they universal?
First, what's universal? In all cultures you differ between men and women, which makes this phenomena universal, though how they differ between the genders differs across cultures in a number of areas. Cultures differ in the specific type and degree of differentiation. Gender roles and gender stereotypes are culturally specific psychological constructs that differ across cultures. So what's culture specific? Here's some examples. Conformity and obedience. A typical stereotype is that women are conforming more than men, but this actually differs between cultures. In some cultures, this is true, but in others, it is more common that men tend to conform in a higher degree than women. Cognitive differences. Another typical stereotype is that men and women differ between their cognitive abilities, as in men being more mathematical and spatial, and women being more verbal, but this also differ across cultures. Some cultures foster and maintain these differences while some do not. Division of labor. Different roles between the sexes exist in all cultures, though some cultures fostering higher differences in the division of labor. For example, how you divide household work differs between the sexes, but also differs across cultures in how great these distributions are.
So how are the gender differences between cultures in the occupational sphere? There are 14 work goals in Hofstede's IBM questionnaire underlying two different dimensions. First dimension is individualism versus collectivism. Second one, masculinity versus femininity, which we will be discussing on here. Masculine pole. Earnings, opportunity for high wages. Recognition, getting the deserved recognition for when you do a good job. Advisement, having the opportunity for promotion. And lastly, challenging work from which you can get a personal sense of accomplishment. And this particular work goal is, however, also associated with the first dimension, unlike the other 7 work goals. For the opposite feminine pole, manager, having a good working relationship with your direct superior. Cooperation, working with people who cooperate well with one another. Living area, living in an area desirable to you and your family. Employment security, being secured enough to work for your company as long as you would like to. This dimension got its name from the fact that it is the only dimension in which the men and women among the IBM employees scored systematically different, except in extreme feminine countries.
At this point, Hofstede's dimension masculinity will be explained while comparing Switzerland, which ranked 70 points, and Sweden with 5 points. Reasons why Switzerland has a high level on masculinity. First of all, people in Switzerland live for work. Success, challenge and recognition are important factors for an individual in Switzerland, whereas people from Sweden tend to work for life and know how to enjoy life with not doing too much but also not doing too less. The next important fact to mention is the implementation of voting rights for women. In Sweden, this right was introduced in 1921. In Switzerland, however, all women were able to vote in the year of 1971, which is way too late. According to Matsumoto, countries which have a high percentage of religious people tend to be more masculine, and that is another fact to point out. Only 22% of the Swiss population are raised without religion, whereas in Sweden, 78% of the population claim to be atheists. While in Sweden a father of a newborn child gets the daddy's months, in Switzerland fathers of newborn children are only allowed to get 1 day off. Furthermore, there are only 32.1% of women in management positions in Switzerland, while Sweden has a percentage of more than 70% in the public sector. Another point that explains the high rate of masculinity in Switzerland is that homosexuals are still being discriminated, while Sweden is more open to homosexuality. Last but not least, the emotional roles in organizations as well as in families. In Sweden and Switzerland there is no distinction between mom and dad showing emotions to their children, but that differs in companies. If a man is a manager in a company in Switzerland, he cares less about the relationship towards his employees and is more focused on their work.